He gave away his last $20 to help a stranger. But what he didn't know, the woman he helped was the CEO who once destroyed his life.
Setup Marcus had learned to stretch every dollar, every meal, every ounce of hope. Each morning began the same, a rush goodbye to his son at the school gate, a job hunt that felt more like begging for air, and the quiet ache of being unseen. Months ago, he'd worked proudly at a corporate warehouse, clocking in early, staying late, believing effort was enough. But then came the downsizing. Out of dozens let go, nearly all looked like him. And when Marcus questioned it, the smiles around him turned cold. Since then, his days blurred together. Rejection emails, cold calls, long walks past help-wanted signs that somehow weren't for people like him. That afternoon, the sky hung heavy, clouds pressing down like the weight of everything he'd lost. Marcus stopped at a small grocery store, just a few basics left to buy before the utility bill hit. He didn't notice the woman ahead of him until her card beeped again and again, the machine flashing red. The cashier's tone grew sharp, impatient. The line murmured under his breath, and Marcus, clutching his last 20 in his callous hand, felt an ache twist inside him. He couldn't have known that this simple act, this fleeting decision between fear and kindness, would open an old wound he thought had healed. Because sometimes the world doesn't forget who you are, even when you try your hardest to start over.
Rising action. Marcus stood in that narrow checkout line, the chatter of the store fading into a low hum. The woman at the counter fumbled through her purse, credit card, store discount card, another card, each one failing. The cashier sighed, rolling her eyes in that practiced way people do when they've already decided who deserves patience and who doesn't. Behind them, the line grew restless. Marcus saw it, the small, familiar shift in the air when embarrassment curdles into shame. He'd felt it himself too many times. He looked at the $20 bill in his hand, creased, soft around the edges, the end of his week's cash. His son's lunch money, the gas for one more trip to a job interview that probably wouldn't call back. His stomach tightened, but something louder than the fear spoke up inside him. Help her. He stepped forward and placed the money on the counter, sliding it forward before doubt could stop him. The cashier blinked, surprised. The woman turned, her eyes wide, glistening with something more than gratitude, hurt, exhaustion, disbelief. Their hands touched for a second as she took the bills. Her thank you was a whisper, fragile and trembling. Marcus nodded, forcing a small smile, unaware that this act of mercy was about to unravel everything he thought he'd left behind. Outside, the cold afternoon air sliced against his skin. He didn't think of her again until his phone buzzed a few hours later with a message from a former coworker. "You'll never guess who just got spotted at the same grocery store. Remember our old boss?" Beneath it, a link. Marcus tapped, heart thudding. The photo loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. The same woman, the same outfit, her name in bold text above a press release about the company's commitment to diversity and her new speaking engagement on inclusive leadership. His chest burned. Memories flooded back. The meeting where she'd smiled while explaining why the layoffs weren't personal, even as her eyes avoided his. The way she'd said, "You'll land on your feet," like it was a blessing she granted. She remembered the rows of boxes, the silence of the loading dock where black and brown workers lingered, waiting for someone to say their names. She never did. Anger tangled with confusion. Had she recognized him? Had she even seen him? The possibilities clawed at him. Maybe she knew and acted desperate just to avoid humiliation. Or maybe she hadn't looked closely enough to notice the man whose world she had shattered. Marcus couldn't shake it. Every commercial with that company's logo, every social post about equality scraped against his raw nerves. He wanted to forget, to move on. But how do you move on from being invisible?
Climax. Marcus didn't plan to see her again.
He told himself it didn't matter, that she probably hadn't recognized him, that the universe would sort its own justice. But the next morning, the story went viral. CEO pays it forward, helped by a stranger, vows company change. His face wasn't shown, but the familiar grocery store camera caught just enough. People shared the clip, praising her resilience, her down-to-earth humility, her renewed faith in humanity. Each repost carried the same lie, that she was the hero. Marcus sat frozen on his small couch, phone glowing in the dim room, his son still asleep in the next room. The $20 he'd given, gone, but the weight of it heavier than ever. He felt the burn of 1,000 unseen stories like his own, erased and retold to comfort the comfortable. He scrolled further, and then he saw it. Her company statement, a reminder that kindness can come from anywhere. The words hit him like a slap. Anywhere, as if kindness were a surprise coming from someone who looked like him. His throat tightened. The same people who dismissed his job applications were now applauding her courage to accept help. Anger flared, hot and trembling. For a moment, he stood, keys in hand, ready to march into that shining tower of glass where she worked. He imagined looking into her eyes, asking if she remembered the day she took away his dignity, and seeing whether guilt flickered behind her polished smile. But something stopped him. His son's laughter drifted from the bedroom, soft and bright. Marcus's fists unclenched, but the ache didn't fade. He realized this wasn't only his story. It was every story that had been rewritten to make injustice look like progress. The news anchors kept smiling on screen, polishing the fairy tale. Yet somewhere between disbelief and rage, Marcus decided one thing for certain. Silence was the reason stories like his kept happening. And this time, he wouldn't stay silent.
Days later, the world moved on, but Marcus couldn't. The viral story slipped down people's feeds, replaced by the next heartwarming headline, the next empty promise. Yet inside him, something had shifted. He no longer saw kindness as an act of hope alone. It was also a mirror, reflecting the deep cracks beneath society's polished surface. He returned to work. Not the warehouse this time. No, those doors were closed, but a local community center that helped unemployed parents find stability. He started volunteering, telling young folks what no resume ever could, that sometimes you can do everything right and still be told you're not enough. But that truth doesn't end your story. It's where you start writing your own. And one afternoon, as he packed food boxes for struggling families, Marcus heard the same CEO's voice on the radio, speaking about rediscovering compassion. He didn't feel anger anymore, just clarity. He finally understood that some people would always confuse charity with justice, that giving back a fraction of what they took isn't redemption. The world had celebrated her moment of grace, but only he knew the whole story. The story of a man who gave his last $20 not to restore her image, but to keep hold of his humanity when the world tried to take it. Because for Marcus, the greater act wasn't charity, it was defiance, the refusal to let bitterness rewrite his heart. And as he walked home that evening, the city buzzing with ordinary life, he carried a quiet question meant for all of us. How many more times will we praise small gestures while ignoring the systems that made them necessary?